Hey everybody, it's Keith with the L1 Automotive Training Channel, and in today's Tech Questions Quickie, we answer your questions that you send to our email at techquestions@l1training.com. We answer questions about automotive industry, tools, equipment, training, diagnosis. We answer questions about broken cars. Send whatever you got, and we'll answer them here in the video. Alright guys, today's video is from Ron. Ron's got kind of a long one here. I just kind of read through it pretty quickly, and there's not a whole lot of punctuation, so I'm going to try to... My reading skills are a little off when there's lack of punctuation, so give me a break here, but I'll read it. It says, I just purchased a $20 a month subscription and started watching the 5-hour lesson. There's a couple of them, I'm not sure yet. It's pretty good, but now I'm thinking this may not be for me. Maybe you can give me a route that might be good. I just purchased a Launch X431 Turbo, and I'm getting familiar with it. It's a pretty good tool. It does have key functions, but after seeing the video, I can't afford to dish out all that money for LSID. I have been turning wrenches for over 35 years, and I'm tired. Do you think I should get some insight from your lessons and maybe try and work for someone who has their own business? I'm still interested in J2534 setup after I pay for my launch, but like at the opening of your video, you talked about a brick. I don't want a bunch of tools that ended up a brick that are useless to me. Like I've bought many special tools that I only use maybe once in a while. I'm very interested in learning, like on your live cast the other day, you and your wife said that when you left work for the day, you didn't shut down, you continued to learn more information about the automotive industry. And that's exactly what I do when I was in Los Angeles. I did do a little mobile diagnostics to make extra money, but often I would get called as a last resort and have to backtrack and dig and ask what has been done so far. Sometimes it would be a wiring spaghetti that someone has already poked around. Any feedback would be appreciated. Thank you from Ron. All right, Ron, thank you. And I'm sorry, when there's lack of punctuation, it's hard for me to follow. I just don't have the mental capacity to do the punctuation myself. I'm sorry. So, a couple things. Thank you very much for subscribing to the website at l1training.com. I appreciate that very much. I think the 5-hour lesson you're talking about is probably the diagnostic process. I'm not sure. There's a lot of like 5-hour ones that are on there. There's about 100 hours of training on there. Says he purchased the X431 Turbo. It's a good scan tool. Says he's doesn't think he can afford all that money for the LSID. It's not that big of a investment. It's about $400, but it's what's required to do keys. So if you're not looking at keys, then that's fine. Just take that off. But it also cuts out your programming ability. If you're going to try to be programming and doing keys, it's very difficult to do without a VSC, at least on anything late model. And by late model, I mean like Fords starting in 2013, most of the push-button cars required a VSC, a Vehicle Security Credential, which used to be called the LSID. But basically kind of a long process to talk about. But that's for another video. Says he's still interested in a J2534 setup after he pays launch off. Keep in mind, a J2534 setup is a lot of money when you factor in you get a laptop, a J device, which is only going to work for programming, not diag on Fords, programming and diag on General Motors products, but it's two separate subscriptions. On Chrysler, it'll work for both programming and diag, but it's a lot of subscriptions for Chrysler. It's a lot of money. Current cost on the low end to just buy a YTech 2 sub to just program like a 14 Dodge truck is going to cost you about $111 for the short-term subscription to do one car. You could do a couple cars in that, but the fees are like $50 to turn on the YTech subscription, $36.95-ish to make it to be able to flash anything, and then to do anything besides just a diag, and then an additional $35 per VIN number for the flash. So you're looking at $111 to do one car. I mean, you're gonna have to charge quite a bit to make that back and make any profit on it. So J2534 is not for the faint of heart. I mean, for the cost of the VSC setup, you can only do 4 programmings on a Chrysler. So. And the VSD is good for 2 years. Let's see. Doesn't want to have any brick tools. I get it. I have lots and lots of tools, but I feel like most of them I still use. There are some I bought that are just I don't ever really mess with, so I get that. and he says he wants to continue on with learning. So that's the thing, you know, like that's what I did. What he's talking about is after work, I wouldn't just leave and shut off the automotive brain. I would continue to invest time after work, at home and at the shop. So, I mean, for over 2 years straight, I stayed at the shop an hour to 2 hours pretty much every single day, learning on broken cars and known good cars and trying to distinguish new patterns and taking cars that I diagnosed throughout the day and went back and said, all right, was there a faster way to come to this conclusion? Was there that kind of, and that's what got me into doing this was trying to figure out a process to be fast. And that's what it takes. So, he says he would try to get extra money doing diagnosis. He says, but often I would get called as a last resort and have to backtrack and dig. So what I take from that is you did a flat rate on what it would cost to diagnose the car. And what I will tell you is you need to charge according to your talent, not according to their budget. I read that in a Facebook post the other day. See that? Made me sound smart, but really it was just, I'm just regurgitating some stuff here. So what I'm getting at is some people go, I went to go do this diagnosis, but I had to spend an hour digging through all the previous work. Well, you just got to charge for it is the thing. So, you know, often when you're the last resort, that means they've spent a couple $1,000s of man hours and lost productivity having one or two techs look at this car for a week, 2 days, 3 days. They've put 3 or 4 parts on the car, so there's labor and parts that the customer should not be paying for if that was not a resolution to the problem. And that whole, well, it needed it anyways crap is BS and everyone knows it. Different video. That'll be for a rant later. But he says often he would get called as the last resort, and he says that like it was a bad thing. I mean, that's what I am. I'm the last resort for a lot of places around here, and it just costs. This is what it costs per hour for me to figure it out. Depending upon how many things you did wrong or how much was wrong with it or how much more is wrong with it now since someone else has been poking around and messing with the wiring, it could cost more. So maybe in the future, you know, call me ahead of time. But you got to make them pay for it, Ron. That's what you're going to run into is that you've got to charge money for your time. That's what it is. It's your experience. You've been in the industry 35 years. You've got some good stories to tell, man. I can guarantee it. So hang tight. I know it says that you're tired. You know, if this is something you want to keep doing, invest your time into training. Just try to be a better tech, and you know you got to charge for what you're worth, man. That's what it takes. That means that not every customer you deal with now is your customer. Should be your customer. I have a lot of shops that use me. They're like, oh man, can you please just not charge us for XYZ? It's not my customer. I'm not for everyone. When someone calls me for help and then they want to beat me up on pricing, I just got to remind myself that I'm charging for what I'm worth, not what their budget is. I really like that phrase now that I've seen it. So, Ron, thank you very much for your question. If you guys have questions, send your questions to TechQuestions@l1training.com and we'll answer them here. And hopefully, you got one that's not as semi-depressing as that. I hate reading that. I hate reading that someone has had that experience. So, all right, guys. So we'll see you next time.